Hello YouTube! So I'm here with Cole again. We are now recording another drunk philosophy video, and that's all there is to say. I'm now just going to start talking. Oh, I suppose I should say that I have bottles of this stuff this time.
What is that?
It's called Tuborg.
I've never seen that in my life.
Okay, well, doesn't really matter. The point is, it does have alcohol in it, so it will achieve the effect. It doesn't have the same sort of... It's got this weird sort of cap where you can just, like, pull it off, I think. I'm not sure.
It's like a champagne bottle.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
that was exciting at first, and then,
What, disappointing?
yeah, a bit lackluster, I think. Oh my god.
Well, I just ate dinner, and I thought, I should get this going. I mean, I know what this does now, so,
How does it taste?
it's sort of the same as before.
Just beers. Wow.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you knocked that back.
Well, there's still half a bottle there, but...
I like that you're not threatened by it anymore. You're like, I know what this is about. And come on, don't tell me. I know you love Mad Max.
I don't love it. It's all
You
right.
have to love Mad Max.
I mean, I saw it when I was a kid, and I don't remember it that well now. I remember it thinking, okay, yeah, this is fine. This is cool.
That amounts to a moral failing.
Really?
In my
Okay.
estimation.
I don't care because you don't believe that there are any moral properties anyway. So yeah, that's just you just said absolutely nothing there. You haven't even made a criticism of me, right? That's just there's nothing. It's meaningless, right? It's just white noise. So
You know too
you're
much.
gonna have to
You know too much.
you're gonna have to rephrase that criticism in some other terms.
Nah. Yeah.
I wanted to tell you.
An aesthetic feeling. There you go.
Okay. That's
Go ahead.
the problem with saying that I have aesthetic failings is that I obviously just embrace that, and I like the fact that it's like you said yourself that I like things that are just fucking terrible. Yeah. So
You liked that, didn't you?
yes, that I
It's true.
take it
That
as a
is the
compliment.
essence of you in some way.
I kind of wanted to.
You were.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said you were reminded of something that you were really excited about a second ago.
Okay,
I
so
wanted to know.
I've been currently doing a video. I've been writing a video on the question, why is there something rather than nothing? Okay.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And now I'd never really read anything about this before because I always thought it was just like a silly question, right? But Robert Nozick in his book Philosophical Explanations has a whole chapter on this, which I just hadn't read it because it's like there's loads of shit in that book, and that was a boring topic, so I thought. Have you read?
Yeah.
That? Oh right, okay.
I don't know if I read the whole thing or if I read excerpts. It was in my undergrad. I had this meaning of life course,
Right.
and we started out with it was a like 200 level course, and I took it right at the end, in my last semester, in my final semester of undergrad. So there were and it fulfilled some like social awareness requirements.
Yeah.
So the class was full of like freshmen who were not interested in philosophy at all, and like didn't understand like the concept of meaning, like be it objective or subjective, and like didn't understand like how existentialism would comment on that and how like absurdism would comment on it. They just didn't understand any of it. And then the professor was this short, older, kind of libertarian guy who like really believed that like academia was out to get conservatives. And he was like, he loved me because I was all anarchistic and all that, and like young and invigorated about politics, but in a way that he was not seeing a lot of in philosophy or anything like that. So I know for sure in that class we did do Nozick's something rather than nothing in the context of meaning of life type stuff. Because of course we would, because the guy loved like libertarianism and Nozick, obviously, and I remember my conversations with him about it, but I remember thinking it was like, look, mathematically it's an interesting question, and theoretically it's an interesting question, but the idea that you can derive like some kind of meaning about your existence or about existence from that seemed dubious to me.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't asking you for the sake of the question, right? It was specifically because of this piece by Nozick, right? Which...
Oh, you got a bit. Okay.
No, honestly, right? So, reading through it carefully and trying to write something from it, it is possibly the maddest thing that I've ever read in analytic philosophy. And I wondered if you could name anything that would top what... Like, there's stuff in there that is just completely off the wall. And I actually wanted to read you.
You gotta give me one of the things. Yeah, regale me. Okay, so I do have this copy of The Examined Life.
It's in... I don't know if it's in that part. I mean, maybe he wrote something else on it in that one as well.
It's got a bunch of excerpts.
Oh, right, okay.
It's like a collected works thing.
But it might not have the whole thing in there then, which would be a shame, because it's completely fucking nuts. I mean, the whole thing is completely nuts. And it just made me think, I was like, well, I wonder what do you think because analytic philosophy is fairly grounded. I mean, analytic philosophers do
Why would you
some
think
crazy
of Nozick
things.
as an analytic philosopher?
I think he's part of the analytic tradition, isn't he? You don't think that he is?
Look, in some sense, but if you're doing political philosophy, you can only be so analytic about it.
I mean,
if you're doing ethics, you can only be like, if you're doing normative ethics, you can only be so analytic about it.
So my opinion on this is that the phrase, maybe this is just a difference, maybe this is a regional difference or something. In the UK, Robert Nozick is definitely an analytic philosopher, right? He would definitely be considered part of that tradition, right? Now, my personal opinion is that analytic philosophy, as the term is used these days, is just meaningless. I don't think it actually captures... I think that it makes sense if you're talking about, say, philosophy as linguistic analysis. If you're talking about the sort of thing that, Russell was doing in On Denoting, or that the logical positivists were doing. In that case, it's like, that's I can understand what that tradition is.
That is what I mean. That is what I mean when I say analytic. And while Nozick does some work like that, the bulk of what he's known for is nothing to do with that.
Okay, I agree. That's fair enough. So I think the way that the term tends to be used at least in the UK, is just to refer to this tradition which kind of traces its roots back to that, but which has developed in all sorts of directions. And so even though political philosophy is actually something completely different, and even though metaphysics is something completely different, and a lot of what happens in analytic philosophy would be making the logical positivists like roll in their graves, it still counts as analytic philosophy because it's occurring in Western universities and it's not continental stuff. That's basically
so I think
style.
Not continental is part of it. It's not psychological. Instead, so look, I mean, the best sense I can make of the continental analytic divide as it stands today, including like people's conceptions of like Nozick as analytic, or political philosophy as analytic, is that one is in like a Socratic tradition of argument, and the other is Hegel. Right? Like that's the two approaches. Like Nozick will give you his position, he will argue for it, he'll face objections and either defeat them or, modify based on that.
Yeah.
It's the Socratic method. Whereas what we think of as continental now is very like, well, everyone can have an opinion, let's synthesize it, right? It's Hegelian. So that's how I try to think of it. So I'm like, okay, the political philosophy and like normative ethics and applied ethics and like literally all this shit has nothing to do with the turn of the 20th century and philosophy of language or even like philosophy of mind at the time. or any of that, or logical positivism, or verificationism, or anything. It has nothing to do with any of the stuff that like made analytic. It's Socratic, not Hegelian. So that seems to be true, at least. So maybe that's what people mean.
Well, yeah, as I say, I don't know. I think it's kind of
But also,
meaningless.
I want you to know, in this book, this Nozick book I have, he has a chapter called The Holocaust. He has a chapter called The Zigzag of Politics. And chapter 27, the final chapter, is A Portrait of the Philosopher as a Young Man.
Yeah, I've never read The Examined Life. I've read, well, obviously Anarchy Sane Utopia, parts of Philosophical Explanations, Invariances, Nature of Rationality.
The Holiness of Everyday Life.
So is this kind of a mad book then? Because I might have to get this. I didn't like. Well, Nozick is kind of mad. He's got actually. People don't seem to like ever comment on how absolutely off the wall Nozick can get, and he gets completely off the wall in a lot of his stuff, at least that I've read. But this. Sorry.
Okay, read me the thing, and then I'll.
I'm just going to read you one thing, but this isn't.
To hear Nozick being insane.
Okay, this isn't the only nutty thing that's in this chapter. The whole thing is completely crazy. So basically, Nozick is considering the question: why is there something rather than nothing? And he says this: one might hold that nothingness as a natural state is derivative from a very powerful force toward nothingness, one any other forces have to overcome. Imagine this force as a vacuum force, sucking things into non-existence or keeping them there. If this force acts upon itself, it sucks nothingness into nothingness, producing something, or perhaps everything, every possibility. If we introduced the verb to nothing to denote what this nothingness force does to things as it makes or keeps them non-existent, then we would say the nothingness nothings itself. Nothingness, hoisted by its own powerful petard, produces something.
Oh no, the petard. Okay.
On this view, there is something rather than nothing, because the nothingness there once was nothinged itself, thereby producing something. Perhaps it nothinged itself just a bit.
Perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps it nothinged itself just a bit.
Bit of nothing.
Though producing something, but leaving some remaining force for nothingness. Right. I can also tell you, right.
Wait, no, that was so long. Oh my god, that was so long.
But I can also tell you that at the end of that chapter, and I don't have the quote here, but at the end of that chapter, he also has a very long footnote where he proposes that because he starts talking about like mystical experiences, and he suggests that the secret experiences that the yoga meditation people sometimes refer to involves them performing autofellatio on themselves. So we have this long footnote about mystical experiences and nothingness and autofellatio.
That doesn't make you love Nozick more?
Of course,
that doesn't make you go like.
Of course it does. It's like, oh my god, this is crazy. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wait, he's got a diagram of the matrix of reality.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh. So look,
because he actually has a diagram of the nothingness force as well.
Look. Wait, oh god, there's so many diagrams in this. This is the matrix of reality, which is like, this is totally worth when you steal a boat and come to America. You can just use my copy. But it's got like towardness in it, which I like don't. And being, oh god, I fucking hate ontology. But anyway, look, there's this thing that happened. So, this thing that happened to me, and I'm going to share it with you, and maybe you'll hate it. I don't know.
Just before you say this, just.
Oh, he likes beer now.
So I've done the second one. That's number 2.
So,
Yeah.
oh wait, I want to hear the sounds.
Oh yeah. It's not much of a sound, to be honest, but I'll see if I can.
Yeah, crack it. Oh, that was satisfying. That was like a champagne cork or something. I liked it. Okay, so do you remember the first time you encountered Kant?
No. Sorry.
It's usually in an ethics course. No, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
usually in an
remember.
ethics course.
Probably
You get something like
was.
deontology.
Probably was,
Right?
but I can't bring it
No, it's
to my
fine.
mind.
So the first time I encountered Kant, I was like, oh, I get this. And I actually kind of like deontology. I prefer it to utilitarianism because at least, I don't know, it was he was trying to systematize it in a way that I bought into more than like Mill's proof of value.
Yeah.
Right? That proof of value is not a proof. And neither one of us can help but be from an analytic tradition where we hear proof and we think of something very specific, and what Mill provides is not a proof. It couldn't have been. Proofing, as you and I think of it, hadn't fucking really started happening yet. Like that wasn't going on. So I was very disappointed in Mill's proof, and then enter Kant, and I look, if you're gonna love logic, you're gonna love rules. Not rules as like enforced by the police or anything like that, but like you're gonna like a system with rules that you apply, right? And I liked deontology, and I was like, oh,
I don't know about that. But...
whatever. Also, like I was 18, so whatever. And I was like, I get Kant.
I don't
like,
think
I
there
like
are
Kant.
any rules of logic, but carry on.
There are rules of logical system.
Yeah.
Okay, that's... Don't just, like, fucking, like, sit there and be like, I'm just gonna recede into my solipsistic corner where nothing exists
People...
and feel like I did something clever. You're so exasperated. You're like, oh, that was my plan exactly. Anyway, so I encountered Kant, and I was like, I get this, and I like it, and like, oh, philosophy is easy, which is a weird response to have to Kant, but that was the response I had. Maybe because it was in the context of ethics, which is, on first blush, quite easy. So I was herp-de-derping my way around, and then I actually, like, read Kant and his stuff on ethics, and I was like, what? This is crazy, and like, how does this work? And then also, as I developed as a philosopher, in other classes, I encountered like prolegomena and critique of pure reason, and I was like, I don't get Kant at all, and I totally thought I did. So it must be very stupid. Like, I cannot make sense. If you've ever read Prolegomena, you're like, what the fuck is this motherfucker saying?
Well,
like, what in the serious fuck is he saying? And I thought it was stupid as shit. Like, I was like, alright, I take back everything I said. Why are people into Kant? That guy is fucking impossible to understand. I don't get him at all. Fuck him so hard. He's just doing this because he wants God around, and that's pretty fucking obvious. This does not make any sense, and the only reason to get on board with this is so that you can congratulate yourself and feel like you're fucking smart. And it was like an early Wittgenstein. But it pissed me off. Like, I didn't get it, and I was like, this cannot make coherent sense. These are not words. This is not a sentence. Fuck this shit. But then I learned about the modern debate, and I saw specifically what he was responding to in Hume and what he was trying to do, and I got this big picture, and I was like, oh, I was a dumbass. I get this. I still disagree with it and like think he's insane. But these are indeed coherent sentences, and they are receptive to analysis, maybe not to the degree to which I'd like, but I can make sense of this, and reason can operate on that. And it was very humbling for me, because I don't take mild positions. I'm like, either this person Like, I'm with them, and this is well argued, and like I fucking love them, like I do with Hume. Or I'm like, get the fuck out of here, you Wittgensteinian motherfucker. Like, that is not an answer to the question anybody was asking. Fuck you. Nor are those sentences. And my experience with Kant taught me that, like, if I think this philosopher, who people I respect take very seriously, is just being stupid, if I think it's that easy, chances are I've missed something.
Yeah.
I've misunderstood it.
Yeah.
And hearing that Nozick, I'm like, this sounds dumb as shit. Like, what the actual fuck is he saying here? This is like my nightmare of what people conceive of philosophy as being, which is like sentences that like Ouroboros themselves, like,
Yeah.
twisted. But maybe we're missing something.
Okay, like, I mean, you have to read the whole piece to appreciate it, because it is actually, there is some good stuff in there, and there are some good ideas in there. At least if you can get on board with asking that question in the first place. Which actually, after having read about it, I'm more on board with that than I was. I mean, look, I'm a hardcore empiricist, so obviously I think that, we're never going to be able to answer that question, but I don't think it's a meaningless question or anything like that. And there is some interesting stuff in the Nozick piece. But that particular paragraph, Nozick himself ends up proposing a different solution, which is he kind of had to propose a different solution.
Somebody else's position. He said some would say, that's how it starts out, right?
I think he said like one would say. But obviously the problem with it is that if you're talking about a nothingness force, that's not nothing. So that doesn't really tell you how you get something from nothing. Right.
But like, so yeah, I guess I don't know what came before. Yeah, that was what got me, was like a bit of nothing. Like, I hear nothing and I think annihilation.
Yeah.
Like, I think a vacuum. I don't think a bit of nothing. What the fuck is a bit of nothing? What the? Like, nothing.
I think the idea there is that the nothingness force. So he said, well, the nothingness force nothings itself.
But it's a force. It's
right.
a thing. If it's a force, it's a thing.
Look, it can either nothing itself a little bit and produce a little bit of something, or it can nothing itself a lot and produce like fucking loads of something. It can produce just like all the things.
Says fucking who? Why? Why would you say, like, why does nothing have this rule? Why is it bivalent, where it's like, you can nothing a little or you can nothing in totality?
Actually, Nozick, he doesn't think that it is. He doesn't think it is bivalent. In fact, he says that there might be. So he later in the article does talk about how there's maybe something beyond existence and non-existence, and there's like something in between those two things. And yeah. And so it's completely crazy. It's the maddest. So I don't know if you've read anything that is that mad within the analytic tradition, but it's certainly the maddest thing I've read. It's completely off the wall.
Other Nozick, yes, is so yeah. That man is. When you were trying to tell me, like when we were arguing and you were sending me links to like Nozick's political position, I'm like, okay, but do you realize that this guy says contradictory stuff like all the fucking time? Like, there's no telling what his position was, because he was just like, he's like a very coy prostitute, where he's like, I don't know, baby, you want some? I'm not saying nothing about nothing. What do you think? Like, it's just. I like that I just characterized Nozick as a very sassy prostitute.
But in that case, it can be what you want it to be, and so
yeah, like
it encompasses a wide range of things.
Do whatever you want. Like it's. Oh no, somebody's computer made a noise. Maybe it was mine. Anyway, yeah, it was my work email. A reaction to my career, but no, yeah, he's always like, no, you're not wrong. I don't think he was insane. I think he thought he was making sense, but I also think, look, you like me, and like I like you, and we like certain people in the world, and you should like Mad Max more than you do, because
I haven't seen it in years and years.
Shut your whore mouth. game recognizes game. And what's happening here is that we are fuckwithers. You and I. And also Mel Gibson and Mad Max. And Nozick is a fuckwither as well. He's just fucking with. Like, he's stirring the pot. He's being a little shit. He's a very clever little shit, and he fucking knows it.
Okay, just before you carry on, I just want to, because
we need to
mention this before I'll let you finish, but I want to mention the story about Nozick to YouTube. Just carry on. I'm going to come back to something, but yeah, what you finish what you were saying. No, sorry.
That was it. Oh. That was it. This is the thing we most love about Nozick is that he's a fuckwither, and
yeah.
We're responding positively to him because we're recognizing this is a clever person. He does have very serious work that I respect. But when I'm confronted with something like what you just read to me about nothingness, nothing in itself, a little bit or in totality, I'm like, that guy was fucking with people. I know it. He was fucking with people. The view from nowhere.
It's brilliant. It was honestly a brilliant chapter. But so I wanted to make YouTube aware of the story about Nozick and Rent, because when you said that Nozick was a fuckwither, I wanted to substantiate that, and I can prove that he was a fuckwither, right?
Oh, he fucked with so hard.
Yeah, no. I mean, do you know about the thing with Nozick and he was renting an apartment and somebody put up the rent and then he sued them?
I have no idea about what you're talking about.
Okay, right. So basically, Nozick was renting an apartment. This was in the 80s. So it was after he wrote all the libertarian stuff, right? It's in the 80s. He's renting an apartment, and California had these rent control laws. I think it was in California. Well, wherever it was. Let's say California, because that's what came to my mind.
I feel like it might have been New York, but go ahead.
We're going to go with California because...
It's always in New York in my head.
Okay, should we say New York then? All right, New York.
It doesn't matter. He was in a place. Yeah. He's at a geographic location.
Had these rent control laws. Now, obviously, Nozick is philosophically against such laws. He was renting an apartment. The guy that owned the apartment put up the rent, and Nozick was like... When you say
put up the rent, what do you mean?
I mean...
Like he increased
he increased the amount that Nozick had to pay to live in this apartment, which Nozick felt, philosophically, was obviously perfectly acceptable. There were laws against doing that, however. So the guy broke the law, and then Nozick goes to him, he's like, look, this is against the law. And this guy, according to Nozick, this guy waved a copy. This is how Nozick put it. He says he waved a copy of Anarchy, State and Utopia in his face and says, well, you can't do anything about this, right? And so Nozick was like,
the fuck I can't.
He was like, fuck you, right? I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to get my money back. So he did. And what he said about it later was, because obviously there's a lot of libertarians who were like, hey, you can't do that. You can't just sue him. You can't use the law
to steal.
Me. And so Nozick later, I'm paraphrasing this, okay? I'm paraphrasing now. He didn't say exactly this, but this is the message. This is what he communicated. He said, yes, I knew it was wrong. I knew that what I did was wrong. I knew that it would come back to haunt me because libertarians would complain about it and people would use it against me. But this guy really pissed me off, so I did it anyway.
Yes! Oh, I love him so hard. Oh my god. Yes, he was a fuck with her. He was just like irreverent and fucked with. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's like somebody just like putting their dick on the table. Like coming into a board meeting and just being like fuck you.
Yeah.
Oh no. This is why I came to love meta-ethics, actually, and probably error theory, because like they'll be like, well, wait a minute, you said this before, and I'm like, yeah, so the fuck what? Like, do you think I was doing more than playing weird little logic games? No, that's all I'm doing, is just playing little puzzle games. And that you think that would dictate my actions is hilarious. Oh, I love Nozick. Fuck yes, I love him more for doing that.
Yeah, so there you go. It's a good little story, that.
I'm also kind of angry at libertarians for being like, we don't see that you're a fuckwither. I wish we were all fuckwithers, but we're not.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't
Most
be
of
as
us
fun
are like,
if everybody was like it. It wouldn't be as fun.
no, because I lived in Australia for like a year and like 90% of them are fuckwithers. Like Australians fuck with everything. They're very sassy. And it was amazing. It was just like we were all like it's an entire country of people pranking each other at all times. And somehow they have like the best economy ever and like single payer healthcare and like all this other like lovely shit and you're like, hey, isn't that a bit fucked up? And they're like, oh yeah, but like this is how we get even. And they're just all fucking with each other at all times. And and I'm like, I have a real problem with compulsory voting. I like the priority voting. I prefer that. But you guys have compulsory voting. I have a problem with that. That's fucked up. And they're like, you are right. It is fucked up that we can be compelled to vote under threat of violence, but we just draw cock and balls on our ballots, so it's okay. And then people have to look at our drawings of cock and balls, so it all evens out in the end. I think cock and balls on your ballot, on your compulsory ballot, thus refutes the idea that if everybody was fuckwithers, it would be bad. No, if everybody was fuckwithers, it'd just be cock and balls everywhere, which I am fine with. Oh, so this weird thing happened. And I don't know that you've ever actually perceived it because we're always coming through like a distorted audio. But I started getting messages, and my boyfriend told me that my videos are all ASMR-y. Like they do the tingles. And I'm like, say what? I think I'm too loud for that, and it's like too excitable for that. But I'm also kind of like, what if they were non-creepy, like not I jerk off to like CP anime ASMR videos? Like, what if that were a thing?
I mean, you've just made a statement which is I don't understand. What if there were?
Have you looked at the ASMR videos that exist?
I have seen it. It doesn't work on me.
They are so creepy. They are so creepy.
Okay. Maybe I've seen different ones. I've seen when I first heard about ASMR, it was somebody who was doing like wrapping presents and the sounds of the wrapping presents, and it wasn't really creepy, and it just didn't do anything for me. I have been told by people who do this thing that it's not necessarily a sexual thing, but it kind of sounds a bit sexual. So
yeah, that's just okay. So maybe I should have parsed it in that sense. It's like on this weird boundary where like okay, I can accept that it's not necessarily sexual, but there's a sexual element to it. And what has happened is that the people who typically make these kinds of videos lean in hard to this like quasi-sexual, like fucking creeper zone. Like it's creepy. It's weird. So I can get the ASMR feels, but most of the time it's so cringy. Like what exists out there is so cringy that I would not. But then I was just doing logic problems in SL in a recording, and there's no me on camera. I'm just like calmly talking through the SL evaluation of a logic problem, and I do like 5 of these, and people are like, this is non-creepy ASMR. And I was like, oh, can I just like make videos that make people happy where I just do logic problems? Because I would be so happy. Like, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. I really want to do that.
you have definitely found a niche market here. that you should exploit?
That's non-cringe ASMR. Like,
Well, get
and
the.
if you search for ASMR not cringy is the thing that pops up, because it's totally fucking cringy. Like, it's these ladies being like, I'm going to rub my breasts on the microphone. You're a bad student. Like, and it's like, what? Because I wanted to see, like, I felt, I was like, man, if you, so when I get it, what's happening is it's like having somebody whisper in your ear, and I figured out that I could. I was one of the people who was like doing it before people labeled it, with like Bob Ross videos, because I have insomnia as well. So I would listen to things to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Star Trek and like Bob Ross and like just human voices were comforting to me. But there were certain sounds that were just like made me feel like I was a baby in a womb. Like, it was just so nice. Like, it's like getting hugged by somebody who you want to hug you. But there's nothing sexual about it for me. It was just like literally going to sleep.
I don't get ASMR. I have tried it a few times, and it just doesn't happen to me.
AJ said the same thing. And then I linked him to some stuff, and he was like, okay, yeah, that's like weirdly comforting.
All right, well, maybe...
I don't get the tingles. I get like weirdly comforting. Like, I can't explain why.
Okay, that kind of sounds totally meaningless, though. I mean, that doesn't really seem like a thing.
That seems qualia or bullshit.
That seems like kind of a load of bullshit. I mean, if it's tingles, I get tingles, because then you can say, well, it's, say, an itch. An itch is something, right? A tingle is something. Pins and needles are something, right? But if you're just saying, well, I mean, it's kind of comforting, but like, I mean, jerking off is also comforting, and it's probably more comforting than this video. Also, if I drink some water when I'm thirsty, that is definitely comforting. And if I look at my the phone, and let's say you send me a message, that's like, oh, I've got a message from someone I like. That's comforting. So I mean, this is comforting. So you see, comforting applies to a whole wide range of different experiences, and it probably just means something I like. Yes?
So, yes. You're essentially saying something cannot exist because we don't really have an adequate vocabulary for it. And what I'm trying to say is tingles is not quite adequate. It's not quite accurate. If you're looking for like a physiological sensation, like touching some part of yourself, this is an auditory experience, and I suppose to some degree it's physiological, but you're not going to get that level from it. It's the lack of adequate language to describe that experience should not be grounds for you to reject that experience is occurring.
Now, I live with my brother, and what he does is he pisses all over the fucking toilet seat, right? And he does this even when he's not drunk, which is really fucking weird. And it seems like, because I've read about this online, and there seems to be like about 5% of guys just do not learn.
Piss all over the toilet.
They don't learn how not to do it. It's very strange. It's very odd, isn't it? Why is that?
Okay, so also, I work at an institution of higher education, and I go into the toilets at the college I teach at, and there's piss all over the toilets in these women's restrooms. And what's happening here is some little 18-year-old freshman has developed the belief that you can catch horrible diseases in your butt from sitting on the toilet seat. It's patently absurd. Unless you have an open wound on like your ass cheeks, you are fine. Also, a toilet seat is largely a sterile surface. This is a hostile environment to the vast majority of bacteria and stuff. It is dry. Only other butt cheeks are on it, which are actually not host to a whole lot of problematic stuff. Hands are way worse. Faces are way worse. Like butts are butt cheeks are pretty fucking clean. And nobody is putting their butthole on a toilet seat. That is not happening in the course of urinating as a woman. So these little 18-year-olds, or maybe these grown-ass women, go into the restroom and they're like, I will hover above the toilet seat. And it's a very uncomfortable posture. You have to have some like good thigh strength to pull off a like narrow hover. So instead, they just kind of like stick their asses out. You just got a lot of boobs, but they just like stick their asses in the general direction of the toilet and they just pee everywhere. There's just urine covering everything. And now, if I enter the restroom and I see human piss all over the toilet seat, urine is not sterile, we have discovered relatively recently. And also, ew, I don't want to sit down. So now I have to hover. And you create this self-perpetuating cycle of fucking hovering. And then a janitor comes along and they wipe it down and it becomes like an alright thing again. And if I was to just wipe it down and not hover, it'd still be moist. And I'd be getting somebody else's piss on my ass. And I'm a goddamn professor and I don't want to do that. I don't want somebody else's piss on my butt cheeks, all because one little shit is afraid to sit down on the toilet. But, side note, all dudes think that they are quite good at aiming, and none of y'all are. Having been a woman who has lived alone...
There's a difference here, because I know that
as soon as a guy moves in, the amount of cleaning I have to do multiplies exponentially, because there's always like some splatter, and also like you get this weird drip like down the front of the bowl, and you're like, what is this coming from? Like, I never see there being pee on the toilet, and yet somehow there's just like urine in like a 2-foot radius around the toilet now.
Yeah, so
y'all should just sit down. Just fucking sit down.
That I know that sometimes the sort of splatter occurs, but the point is I then clean it up. And the other thing is that I always lift the lid up before taking a piss, whereas my brother doesn't, right? So
that's the problem.
Yeah.
He's just not lifting the lid.
So, but it's also true that actually, guys, you should sit down, because if you piss from a height, it will throw out bits of urine.
That's what I'm saying.
Minor bits, even outside of the toilet.
So you get like a fog.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the problem of dudes pissing all over the place, either with reckless abandon or just by creating the urine fog, troubles me deeply. And always has. I've dated 2 guys who sit down to pee. Not at my request, because somehow sitting down to pee would like unman dudes. Not wanting to emasculate the dudes I date, I'm like, fine, whatever. I would prefer if you sat down, because there's the urine fog that occurs because you are peeing from a height, and there's a splatter and you don't see it, but it's there, and then it's gross, and it's not there when I'm single, so something's happening. I've dated 2 guys who just like, so one guy just really liked pooping, and he was like, yeah, I always sit down to pee because maybe I decide to poop. That was his logic. And I was like, I don't care. He also would have like, he had a book in the bathroom and to have a bit of a read.
Yeah.
And it was like a relaxing, chill time for him. And I'm like, why can't I want to spread that like coronavirus throughout the population, where y'all are just like, no, this is fucking me time. I have a sit down, I relax, I read a bit of a book.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Well, I don't find it relaxing or interesting in any way. It was just like about 2 years ago, I saw this video where somebody was like spraying some purple-coloured liquid into a toilet from a height, from the same height as you would piss from. And the purple-coloured liquid, it was like spraying out everywhere. So I thought, well, there'll be less cleaning if you just sit down, which is why I generally promote sitting down.
Do you sit down to pee, Kane?
Yeah, I would say like 90% of the time, but sometimes I can't be bothered.
Fucking God bless you.
Because sometimes I can't be bothered because
I get it.
I don't know why, but it just feels less convenient.
You like terrible jokes and terrible arts and brutalist architecture and You like John Cage when he makes not a fucking noise. Like, you like terrible things that are just terrible. There's nothing about it other than that it's just terrible.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that, but okay. I mean, that's maybe how other
But
people would look at it.
that is the thread that ties those things together.
Yeah. Is it? Well, yeah, okay, it is probably. I mean, you're probably right about that. Yeah. See, it is true that I try to avoid being cool, right? And I mean, I don't try to avoid it, but I think that in the tastes that I have, there's always a danger that I might become cool. And so, you know, I like free jazz. Now, everybody thinks free jazz is just noise, but it's also kind of cool. So you've got to put some 80s pop in there to make it uncool. And I try to avoid being cool. So it's about finding that right balance where things are terrible.
Why do you try to avoid being cool?
Well, I don't try. I'm psychologizing myself here, and I'm saying, what's the underlying principle?
You're analyzing that this is happening.
Like, why exactly is this going on? And I think that's what I try to avoid, because there's always a danger if you're going to be somewhat non-conformist. There's always a danger that you're just going to end up conforming to the counterculture. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
either.
You want to be authentically counterculture.
Right. Yeah. So I think
Whereas
that's
if you're
what's
cool
going on.
about it.
But you know, I do actually like all this stuff that you say is fucking terrible. I mean, it's not like I'm lying about this.
I didn't
This isn't
think
a
it
performance.
was.
I mean,
You genuinely like things that are just fucking terrible.
okay, but I don't think they are terrible, is my point.
But you recognize that they kind of are.
Well, I recognise that other people might dislike them because I think other people haven't put as much thought into them as they should have done. I mean, for example, let's take, for example, brutalist architecture, where you specifically said, you were like, hey, you don't actually like this, it's just fucking terrible.
I was giving shit about it.
Yeah. But I think people just haven't thought about it because they're all like, oh, well, that's just ugly and it's not very well designed and all this shit. But actually, if you take another perspective on it, brutalist architecture, for me, here's what I would say. It's that...
You've read some Ayn Rand and you were like, man, that gets the job done.
No, I don't really like Ayn Rand. I think that for me, it's purely aesthetic. I love it because it's like, you know, those old medieval castles, right? And I'm talking about the fucking old ones, not the
definitely
the more
they
recent
tortured
ones.
some people for believing in God in the wrong way.
Yeah,
in
just
those
these ones that are just like fucking stone. They're just big stone and they're like
hateful,
impenetrable.
fuck you stone.
Yeah. And the more recent castles, they've got all these embellishments and they all look pretty. I'm not talking about them, the old ones.
The old ones are like, people are gonna throw giant rocks from catapults to try to get in here. This is a war house.
Exactly.
This is a house.
Yeah. It's
with
just
fucking war.
fucking primal and raw, and it looks like it's been there forever. And brutalist architecture is kind of like the modern version of that to me. So I genuinely like it. And I can say similarly why I genuinely like all of the things I claim to genuinely like. I do genuinely like all this stuff.
Look, there's this form and function debate in aesthetics. I don't know if you know about this. Not like philosophical aesthetics, but within art, right? Or at least like functional art. You have form and function, and you have some people who are like, I'm all about form, and you have some people who are like, I'm all about function. Then you have some motherfuckers specifically like within modern design who are like, success in function is success in form. They're identical. And it seems to me that what you're doing is you're just saying like, I am all about function, and I like brutalist architecture because it is all about function.
Well, no, I don't.
You can see the function of it in the form. The form is dictated by the function.
Okay, I don't actually agree with what you've said about me there. I mean, okay, so brutalist architecture, when it started, it was basically all about function, and it was about seeing the form in the function. But that's not why I like it. I don't take a stance on the form versus function thing for aesthetics in general. I just like, I don't know, I just think, both are important and I don't care. So, yeah. But
it's so funny to hear you say.
Yeah, I mean, I just...
a lot to say about a lot of shit, but you're just like, no, fuck you, that's not a thing.
Yeah, I'm not that bothered. I wish I could find this essay, because I wrote an essay for I did a philosophy of art course, and I wrote an essay where I argued that the distinction was incoherent, but then I've never been able to find that essay again, and that annoys me, because I can't remember what my argument was. but somewhere in there.
No, you can make that argument with certain things because well, it's going to be the same as the art and ethics stuff, right? With the formalists who are like, no, aesthetic elements are completely divorced from ethical elements of a piece, and that's fine. You can try to divorce them. I think it leaves you at a impasse when it comes to certain things like narrative pieces of art. Like, what's the form of that, or what's the function of that?
Right.
Look, I think that people who are mathematical or analytic in nature appreciate parsimony, elegance, whatever you want to call it. So when you see a bunch of facade stuck on, or when you see a bunch of superfluous things that do not contribute to the function, that is inelegance. That is attraction from the it's not concise, right? And that is ugly to us because we are.
Whoa! I mean, speak for yourself, because
we appreciate concision.
No, I don't.
You want some gargoyles? You want some gargoyles on your fucking castle?
Yeah, I mean,
you do?
I'm a huge fan of free improvisation, free jazz. I like stuff that's just fucking noise, just everything fucking happening at once, right? Just like all of the instruments playing all of the time, right? Yeah, but the point is that this doesn't. My love of brutalist architecture doesn't arise from some sort of underlying aesthetic principle, right, that I apply to all art, right? It's just that
you just like,
look, everybody fucking hates, well, not everybody, but there's lots of people who fucking hate brutalist architecture, right? Which is bullshit.
I do not like brutalist architecture.
People haven't thought about it enough. They haven't thought about it clearly. That's the first thing. And I also love it. I think it is. And do you know what annoys me, right? Is that in England, right, so brutalist architecture kind of started in Britain, and actually there are some architects. So I use the term brutalist architecture in a very kind of colloquial way. I just use it to mean fucking big concrete, right? And there are architects who will get really annoyed about that.
Just mean big concrete?
Yeah, it doesn't. Because they'll be like, no, brutalist architecture was specifically a British movement. It was between like 1950 to 1970, and that's what brutalist architecture is. And so
also
if it's
kind
not
of Soviet, which kind of bothers me.
Well, but again, though, I suppose it depends on the person you ask, because there are some people who use it in this really specific way.
You know that my boyfriend is like an architecture grad student. He comes from like an architecture.
Oh yeah, well, ask him what he says about this. Am I right about this? Like, there are some people who think brutalist. Okay, so there are some architects, I think, who say that brutalist architecture is specifically a British architectural movement from between 1950 to 1970, around about that sort of time. It's like post-war British architecture, and it was something that happened then. And so if you were to construct a building now that looked very much like a British building, so if you were to construct a building now that looked like something built by Dennis Ladson,
British style, but it wouldn't be brutalist.
Yeah, it wouldn't count as brutalist because it's out. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I completely understand. I'm gonna venture a guess here, and he might not know this, but I do. British people, for some reason, are like, no, this is defined entirely in terms of what we did during this time period, and it's like you realize that like you're a tiny island, right?
Yeah.
But let's no, that's always going to be incorrect because it ignores the rest of the fucking world as if we weren't doing anything. But give me a moment, and I will ask. I took out the wrong headphone because I'm quite drunk. 1 second. AJ.
I'm not saying that all architects say this.
He has heard amongst architects in England that brutalist architecture is only British design in that style, in the brutalist style, between the years of something like 1950 and 1970. Would you agree or disagree? We're giving you expertise.
Only by British architects?
Only by British architects.
Well, I don't know, because I think like Erno Goldfinger came from fucking somewhere other than Britain, but I've heard it was a British
But was
thing.
it's fundamentally British. No, not where it began. You don't know shit about that. You haven't done art history. Is that if I built something now in that style, it wouldn't be brutalist because I have no affiliation with England and I am building outside of that era. He says no, that's bullshit. It's a
Okay,
style.
fair enough. Well, that's good.
And
That's
I
good
think
because
am I wrong in saying that I think it has its basis historically in Soviet architecture? Yeah, he said. Yeah, that's what you want to look to is Soviet architecture.
well, you see, okay, two things. Number one,
I know something about everything.
so number one, that's relatively good news because that means that I don't sound like a complete twat when I'm talking about when I use the phrase brutalist architecture to refer to a style rather than a specific tradition, right? So I'm glad about that. But
yeah,
I've definitely
it's
encountered
weird
this kind of
that British
view,
people need
and
it to be like them.
well, but no. Here's the other thing I was saying, right? About so
What in philosophy? Literally, the kind that we don't do is called continental
yeah, but
because it's not your island. That's so weird.
But here's the thing, right? So it is definitely true. I'm glad that at least in America, brutalist architecture is just used in this more general sense. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and its Soviet roots are acknowledged.
Yeah, although I don't know, Soviet root is it? I didn't
Yes,
know that, but
yes.
okay.
Yes, because they didn't have shit to build with, and it was
Yeah,
all
yeah,
super fucking egalitarian and just like straightforward and get its job done.
Wait a minute.
Entirely functional.
So in the colloquial sense, if you look at a lot of brutalist constructions versus Soviet constructions, what you find with at least a lot of the British brutalism is this incredible kind of these incredible dynamics, right? You look at like the National Theatre designed by Dennis Lasdon, and it's these big fucking, it's dynamic, and I don't get that with the Soviet stuff. The Soviet stuff is pure function.
You're looking at innovation in that context.
Yeah.
So this person was given a project, and they chose to do it in this style, and they accommodated the project, right? So naturally, for that sort of thing, it's going to be different than it was in the Soviet Union, but it has its roots in Soviet structures.
Yeah. Okay,
AJ wanted to say something. I'm gonna hear what he had to say. What did you have to say?
I looked it up. It did start in Britain, but then quickly got adopted by a lot of the other countries.
Can you hear him?
I can't hear a thing he's saying. No, I'm afraid.
There are arguments that it started in England but was quickly adopted by socialist countries.
Okay, that's probably what British architects say. Are those arguments all made by British architects?
But those wouldn't be like non. When?
And he was right, 1950s.
Yeah, the modern era. Yeah.
Where it started. And then basically it's just utilitarian, low cost social housing.
That's what it was. I said egalitarian. I meant utilitarian. Yeah. Low cost. Would you say high? Yeah, so the prevailing thing here seems to be that it is architecture influenced by a political socialist set of principles, which is to say, it gets the job done.
Yeah, listen.
This is interesting. If you tour the MIT campus ever, every building on the MIT campus was designed by a different architect. So it's unlike any other campus in the world, where usually like they had some big design to it.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be wildly diverse and innovative in a lot of different ways. There are pieces there, and this is in, well, I guess it's in New England, but it's in America.
Yeah.
And it is undeniably like some really relevant examples of brutalist architecture. There are 3 or 4 buildings on that campus.
I know. There's
and it's bizarre that if it was built outside of that era and in a different country, that's going to preclude it from being this style.
Yeah, I know.
Style
and
doesn't.
Just to be clear, what I'm saying is, I do not use the term in that way. So this is something that I've encountered architects saying, right? Like, so I will use the term brutalist architecture just to refer to a particular aesthetic style.
From an architect dynasty.
Yeah.
Like all his aunts and uncles and his parents, and they're all fucking architects.
Yeah, but so
like, no,
I'm just using this term to refer to a style. I've encountered this kind of view, and I can't remember what my point was. Oh yeah, no, I remember the point I was going to say.
Beyond
so
the utilitarian motivation.
Yes. So, number one, if you use the term to refer to a style, then... Sorry, if you use the term to refer to a particular tradition, then you have to count people like the Smithsons as brutalist architects, and a lot of their stuff is kind of shit. So, because they didn't use, like, fucking big concrete, it was all just about pure function, and, you know, their stuff sucks. So that's the first point. The second point was this. Okay, what was the second point? Oh yeah, so brutalism is often considered, and it may not have started as a British tradition, but it at least became very popular in Britain, and the British sort of helped to define it. I mean, the British really, I mean, they fucking did brutalism, right? We fucking owned brutalism, right? It's like...
Yes, you're very relevant.
Yeah.
You're so relevant.
And, well, I mean, I sense some sarcasm there, but, like, seriously, we did brutalism really fucking well, okay? I mean, the best brutalism
from
comes...
the account I was just given, it does originate...
You can ask your architect friend, give him the names, Owen Luder, Rodney Gordon, Dennis Lasden. I mean, these people were fucking brutalists, right?
I don't know if it does, like, art history, but yeah.
Anyway, we owned fucking brutalism. Now, the people...
Fine, I don't know why
the people... Let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. Finish
your point.
The people who are, like, most in support of fucking tearing down all of these wonderful concrete monsters, those motherfuckers are the same people who are going to be like, oh no, British culture is being destroyed by the Muslims coming into our country, right? It's these fucking assholes, and they're the ones who are destroying actual British culture by pulling down these wonderful buildings. So fuck them.
So you needed to be fundamentally British in order to say that those people are hypocrites.
Exactly.
I like it. That was so stupid, it made me feel patriotic. Like, that just happened. And I, like, very nearly, like, got arrested, and my boyfriend very nearly got arrested, like, 2 nights ago. And I still was able to feel patriotic because that was so fucking stupid. That was the dumbest thing. Oh no. Okay. No, the reason I felt patriotic is because, like, this is not entirely true, but, like, if you're a school child, this is the headline. So I don't know how to discern what, like, an American zeitgeist is, but I think this is a fair way to do it. Like, we have this identity that we're a fucking melting pot.
Yeah.
Like, give me some random bullshit. Well, that's America. You got some Muslims? Fine. That's America. You got some brown people, you got some fucking red people, you've got some white people, you got some people who want to pray to pagan gods. That's America. And, like, you just made me love my country. Because it's not just one thing. Our identity is like, yeah, we're a hot mess. We're a bit of a dumpster fire, but what are you gonna do? And I love that. That's so much better. That's so much better, is just to be like, yeah, people fuck each other. Gonna get people of all different colors, and they're gonna eat some fried rice with some tahini, and, like, I don't know, maybe you have a Mexican beer with it all to top it off. We don't fucking know. Just put it in a big pile. We're good. Like, I'm mourning the loss of my sense of entitlement. I had hot privilege. Like, I had hot privilege. And that hot privilege will eventually fade, and I am aware of that. And I'm just a little sad about it. It's a bit of a bummer that I'm going to have to operate in the world without that. I'm not stoked about it because it would lower my quality of life, probably slightly, because, like, not a whole lot of, like, my sense of identity or anything is built into that. But yeah, like, I remember I was sitting in a bar here in Vegas, and this was before I started drinking, and there was this like drunk bitch who was very obviously 21. She wasn't even that attractive or anything. Like she was, I'd say below average, but not by much. Like average, but average or below average. And she was being really loud and really bitchy to her boyfriend. And I went into the bar to get a stromboli, which is delicious. And this bar has these delicious stromboli. So I'm in there waiting for my stromboli. And there's this like 90-year-old lady gambling at a video poker machine at the bar adjacent to this couple with the really bitchy girl. And the old lady like gets fucking fed up with this young woman's loud mouth. And she looks at her and she goes, I used to be young and hot and get whatever the fuck I wanted. You got to do something else with your life because bitch, that fades. And I was like she was completely fucking earnest, and then she took a drag of her cigarette and just went right back to her video poker machine like, fuck you, bitch, I know what you're about. It ain't nothing special. Like, you gotta figure that shit out. Otherwise, this is what you get. You get 90 years old playing video poker in a fucking random bar in Vegas while some bitch waits for her stromboli. And, like, I don't know, just that, like, it didn't shake the dumb basic bitch, but it shook me. I was like, fuck. Yeah, you need to be aware that, like, that is not essential to your existence. You will continue to exist without that. There we go.
Nice. Right, so so you know, embarrassing on that. You do not have to care what my opinion is. You can just be like, okay, I don't give a shit.
Being kind of feministy about
isn't the dark web something that was literally constructed by the US government to allow them to like spy on shit, and they only opened it to people because in order to remain anonymous they had to open it to the public or something? That's where it came from, isn't it?
Okay, so Tor, which stands for The Onion Router. I'm fine with any of this being released because it's just information. Tor, in its original incarnation, routing access to the internet was originally created for the Navy, so that they could communicate with one another. There was no them choosing to release it to the public. It's just a routing method of accessing other servers.
Okay, so where did I hear that? Because, so just to be clear about this, right?
There's a bit of reality in what you've heard, but most of what you're saying is fiction.
The thing that I heard, and I'm probably expressing this incorrectly. No, okay, so what I heard was it was created by the US government or something in order for spying purposes or something. And the key thing is that they were forced to open it to the public. I mean, I'm probably wrong about why they created it, but they were forced to open it to the public because there had to be lots of people using it in order to retain the anonymity, right? So it wouldn't be anonymous if only the US government was using it, because otherwise everybody would be like, oh, that's the fucking government doing something. So they had to open it to everyone else.
No, they did not voluntarily open it, and it was not in the interests of making it private. This is the way Tor works. Okay, so let's say I run a Tor node on my computer. There are 3 types of Tor node. There is the entry node, right, where you get on it.
Yeah.
There are 5 redirects, and then there's something called an exit node, and that's where it comes out at, right? So that's a total of 7.
Yep.
So, and this is just like me, big picture onion routing description. So it's not necessarily going to be true in all circumstances or with different programs or whatever. But so Tor, or rather onion routing, was indeed originally created by the United States military. The only point of loss of anonymity is at the exit node. Obviously, like by mathematical necessity, the more people you have running redirect nodes, the more quickly this process is going to go. But if you're redirecting all over the place, it doesn't really matter. Those redirects, those 5 people just running standard redirect nodes, that can be whatever. It could just be like 20 people. It'd just be hella slow. The loss of anonymity occurs at the exit node. And the government did not willfully release this to the public. It, as is the case with technology, like once it exists, it exists. And they didn't like, what does it mean to like create this thing? It's just routing. So they created the original onion routing system. But what has fallen out of that was not volitional on their part, like that people got their hands on it, and they are not on Tor. They're not using that. They're still using their own fucking thing. Tor is a fork, I guess is the way to think of it from that. So let's say I run a node in Tor. That's the thing. I have to individually set up on my computer, and people who are using Tor will use my node to bounce their traffic around. You can also volunteer to run an exit node, which I did briefly. But it's used for lots of things other than just drug buying or like super sketchy shit like porn or like rape porn or whatever. It's also used so that like people in Syria whose internet is blocked from accessing certain information, or people in China for that matter, can like access Wikipedia. The dark web is not, or using Tor is not inherently the same as using the dark web.
Okay.
You can access the open web through Tor. It's just, it reroutes your traffic so that you cannot be blocked or held accountable for whatever it is that you've accessed. And the anonymity loss point is at the exit node. It is not, you don't need more people to do that. You could theoretically like have like one exit node. And as long as nobody shut that down, like just all the traffic would have to go through that exit node. And it'd be hella slow.
Okay.
I hope did that answer your question?
Well, I think so. Although, to be honest, I don't really even know what the alternative was that I was proposing because I just don't know this stuff. So, but yeah, that
It's
does
really
explain.
good. Oh my god, it's really good.
I've never. What would I need it for exactly?
I mean, so I before I was interested in accessing the dark web myself, I ran an exit node because I had a strong interest in people in countries with repressive governments being able to access the open web. And I don't control what traffic exits through my node. So yeah, somebody could be trying to access child pornography or something through my exit node. And I don't like that. But at some point, because it's a choice between doing nothing and doing everything, right? You either run the node or you don't. Specifically with regard to the Arab Spring, I had a lot of friends in Syria who couldn't access anything. They couldn't access the internet during the beginning days of the Arab Spring, and I decided that I would run an exit node for them so that they could see the news from other countries, and they could access information and continue to read things that were blocked by their country, or at certain time periods access the internet at all. So yeah, maybe some people use my computer my exit node to do some shit that I am not morally okay with. But given the choice between doing nothing and helping these people be able to read and access information that they have every right to access, as far as I'm concerned, I will default to that because I believe the vast majority of people are not trying to get their jollies off to a small handful of like 300 child pornography fucking videos and images, but instead the vast majority of people are living under repressive governments, and they're just trying to access the free and open internet.
Yeah.
And I want to help them do that. So I feel like you have similar enough values to mine that you can find that compelling.
Yes, I can. I'm still not sure how all of this works, and I'm always worried about setting up stuff with the dark web, because I think that's going to like put me on the radar of the UK government,
Yes.
which is incredibly. I mean, like,
Yes.
we arrest people for putting fucking jokes on Twitter, right? Like, that's literally
So
where we are now.
If you put what we just discussed on the internet, you will get responses that are like, a bitch ran an exit node? What the fuck? Because people who know what that is, yeah, there's a high degree of risk taking in it. And I didn't do it for a super long time, but I did do it specifically while my friends in Syria were fucked.
Yeah.
And I felt like it wasn't an obligation, but if I wanted to create the kind of world that I want to live in, that was something I could do to help advance that future.
See, the problem is
bring
that
that about.
I just don't act in such a way as to create the kind of world I want to live in. I act in such a way that will benefit me and the few people that I know and like. So I'm probably not going to do this.
Maybe you're not. Yeah, no, don't, Kane, don't run a fucking exit node. It's really risky.
Yeah.
It's really risky.
Okay, look, here's the thing. I can also tell you that the timer on my food is currently at 5 minutes, which means, you know, whatever we do now.
And yours is actually like 11 minutes, right? Like that you have to keep it in the oven for. I'm guessing.
What the fuck does that mean? It's 5 minutes. I mean,
if you look at the back
time
of the
passes
pizza,
at the same rate here.
Yes, if you look at the back of the pizza, it says like cook for 11 minutes.
Oh,
I'm guessing that you're supposed to cook for 11 or 12 minutes.
18.
18?
18 to 23. But, I mean, it takes less, because we've got a fan oven, so...
Wouldn't it be fewer?
What, a fan oven? Yeah, I mean, a fan oven does stuff quicker.
No, not less. Fewer. You said technically it takes less, and I was saying wouldn't grammatically it be
Technically, it takes less time, okay? It would be fewer minutes,
but
less time.
Minutes.
Don't try to fuck me on this one.
You said minutes.
Don't try to fuck me. I did
18
not.
20 minutes, so it takes less because we have a convection. You didn't say convection, but that's what it's fucking called.
No. It takes less time. Yeah, that's what the less was modifying there. Even if I didn't explicitly state it.
Time?
Yeah.
All right.
Less time. It takes less time. Okay, you can't fuck me on that because
prior to that we've been talking about minutes, which are definitely a count noun.
Well,
which would be fewer.
I did not mean to say. It may be the case that it sounded like I was saying less minutes, but that is not what I meant to express.
Even less minutes would be like as cringy as those ASMR videos with like the 12-year-old girls.
Look, I don't even give a fuck about your dumbass grammatical rules anyway. I'm going to say what the fuck I want. So if the only reason why I do the less and fewer thing properly is because I think it sounds better to say, right, that's it. That's the only reason.
Okay, I've been somewhat unfair to you.
I don't care about grammatical rules.
AJ really struggles with the less and fewer. In fact, until he met me, he didn't know there was a difference. And I just like compulsively correct it. So while I'm talking to you, I'm also like low-key fucking with him.
So let me just be
clear about this. Your
grammar
is impeccable,
right?
And yeah,
when I am not,
I'm not actually that. But it does sound better though, right?
It does sound a lot better, yeah. But when I'm sort of talking carefully and I'm not talking sloppily, I use less and fewer correctly. But I don't use it correctly because it's the correct thing to do, okay? I just use it correctly because it sounds better. I just speak in whatever the fuck way I want, and if other people don't like it...
I was very drunkenly trying to explain this to him, where I was like, imagine if I said, like, I have fewer hate for that guy than this other guy.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if I fucked it up in this way that nobody ever fucks it up in. Like, it sounds awful. It sounds so bad. And, like, I don't really give a shit, but, like, it should just sound wrong. It should sound ugly to people. and it just surprises me that it doesn't.
And let me ask you this. Who the fuck would say it takes less minutes? I mean, you didn't say less minutes.
What
Do
does
people
it
say
take
that?
less minutes? Everyone, yes, and I'm just like,
It takes less minutes. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I've never heard that before.
what less minutes? What? Of Max Turner.
Can you
what
just
do you
talk
know?
while I eat? Do you think we
Okay.
can do that?
Yeah. Can I read you some Max Stirner? Because it's hilarious. Because it's like, so it's not analytic in the like it has to be British way, but it is analytic in some ways, so far as I am concerned. Also, I wrote this whole big thing about how actually Nietzsche stole from Stirner, and it's very well researched. But anyway, I think people just like Nietzsche better. So, um, this is the sexiest thing in all of philosophy. Are you ready? Give your pizza mouth. You just have to understand. I like to say, how's the pizza?
I mean, I have to say, I think you were right that the salty stuff
Salty
operates
shit
better
and beer. It's
than the
so
chocolate.
gratifying, right? It's just so fucking satisfying. Okay, so where could one look without meeting the victims of self-renunciation? There sits a girl opposite me who perhaps has been making bloody sacrifices to her soul for 10 years already. Over the buxom form droops a deathly tired head, and pale cheeks betray the slow bleeding away of her youth. Poor child, how often the passions may have beaten at your heart, and the rich powers of youth have demanded their right. When your head rolled in the soft pillow, how awakening the nature quivered through your limbs. The blood swelled your veins, the fiery fancies poured the gleam of voluptuousness into your eyes. Then appeared the ghost of the soul and its eternal bliss, because he like really hated the church and how it controls people. So then appeared the ghost of the soul and its eternal bliss. You were terrified. Your hands folded themselves. Your tormented eyes turned its look upward. You prayed. The storms of nature were hushed. A calm glided over the ocean of your appetites. Slowly the weary eyelids sank over, the life extinguished under them. The tension crept out unperceived from the rounded limbs. The boisterous waves dried up in the heart. The folded hands rested a powerless weight on the unresisting bosom. One faint last, "Oh dear," moaned itself away, and the soul was at rest, which is in italics. The soul was at rest. You fell asleep to awake in the morning, to a new combat and a new prayer. Now the habit of renunciation cools the heat of your desire, and the roses of your youth are grown pale in the chlorosis of your heavenliness. The soul is saved, the body may perish. How well you did, and then he like has like an ode to some French prostitutes. How well you did to scorn this pale virtue. One free grisette against 1,000 virgins grown gray in virtue. I love it. He's just like, I didn't read that particularly well because I'm drunk, but it's just like he's sitting on a bus and like eyeballing this girl who like clearly was like young and wanting to fuck and thirsty, and she was like, "Oh, but God wants my pussy for himself." And she prays away her like natural desires and renounces herself in part because she's renounced her body, right? And then goes on about how the prostitutes are the ones who own themselves. But what's funny is, as continental as it sounds, the next sentence is, the fixed idea may also be perceived as maxim, principle, standpoint, and the like. Archimedes, to move the earth, asked for a standpoint outside of it. Men sought continually for the standpoint, and everyone seized upon it as well as he was able. This foreign standpoint is the world of mind, the ideas, thoughts, concepts, essences. It is heaven. Heaven is the standpoint from which the earth is moved. Earthly doings surveyed and despised to assure themselves heaven is to occupy the heavenly standpoint firmly and forever. How painfully and tirelessly humanity struggled for this. I fucking love it. Love Max. I can't help it. It's like Continental Analytic had like an angry baby that just wanted to fuck. It's so good. Why are you giggling?
Nothing. I don't know.
Not nothing. What?
I feel like I feel like a king because I'm fucking eating this pizza and I'm just sitting here and there's this like really hot woman just reading philosophy at me.
Is that what kingdom is?
Well, it is if I'm the king.
I like that too. Yeah, it's literally called The Ego and His Own.
Yeah, but I thought that was like a mistranslation and it should have been called the fucking is and the is not or some fucking vague shit like that. I don't fucking know.
I've heard The Ego and Its Own. No, so like to just make it gender neutral, but whatever. I'm fine with male pronouns. Like, I'm so mad at feminists because I'm like, bitch, I will have fucking the rights of man. Like, I will have some Thomas Paine. And I accept that when that man said the rights of man, he meant humanity. I'm not going to exclude myself from that volitionally and then try to fucking reinvent the fucking wheel. No, these are the rights of man, and I am included amongst that. Obviously, I too am man in that sense.
See, here's the thing.
Here's
the thing. Before you move on,
fussing about The Ego and His Own.
Before you move on,
says his own.
I do just want to say that from a purely aesthetic point of view, the rights of man sounds better than the rights of humans. Because man has this like low vowel, extended vowel, man. Humans
and
doesn't
also
have
it's
that.
mankind. We've been using this language forever. I will not quit myself of it. If society tells me that when you say mankind, you are including women amongst that, why the fuck would I want to fucking play semantics instead of saying, yes, these arguments that were made extend obviously to all of humanity? Why the fuck would I do that? They're beautiful, elegant arguments, and Thomas Paine was a baller-ass motherfucker. I'm not going to quit myself of that guy's work. He was incredible. He fucking sat in the best watching people be fucking executed for ages and was like, all I care about is fucking the idea that there are some things you cannot do to human beings without fucking extremely negative repercussions. Fucking A. He did get a little bit religious in there, which I'm not a huge fan of. But anyway, so the only argument against The Ego and His Own that I've seen with regard to translation is that it's The Ego and His Own rather than The Ego and Its Own. Regardless how you want to translate it, whatever. I'm like, so I had to take the chair of one of my departments was Continental, and I had to take like a 19th century German Phil class. I didn't have to, but I was like, maybe I want to know what's up with Hegel and like all the rest of them after Hegel, in a continental sense. Like I feel like a shittier philosopher for not being able to understand these people. So I'm going to endeavor to understand them. And our final paper was to be on any like 19th century continental German thinker. And I researched the fuck out of Max Stirner. And like there is an extremely strong case to be made that Nietzsche effectively, like with his Übermensch and everything else, was like heavily borrowing from Stirner. He was aware of Stirner, and like everything people like about Nietzsche was actually Stirner. And I can send you the research and all of that stuff. There's a good case to be made. Now, I don't know whether or not I buy into that, but there is a good case to be made. That being said, the thing that was most said about Stirner in his own time was that it would be profoundly dangerous if people understood him because he is so clearly right. And that just like fucks me up that people don't read this guy. That he gets laughed at. Like the same way Ayn Rand is occasionally dismissed, although she wasn't a particularly good philosopher. Whatever. He was quite good, and yeah, he waxes poetical sometimes, but like I don't think anarchism and philosophy are cheapened by the fact that they choose to disclude this man. Christianity has aimed to deliver us from a life determined by nature, from appetites as actuating us, and so has meant that man should not let himself be determined by his appetites. This does not involve the idea that he was not to have appetites, but the appetites were not to have him. That they were not to become fixed, uncontrollable, indistinguishable. Now, could not what Christianity, parentheses, religion, contrived against the appetites be applied to us its own precept that mind, thought, conceptions, ideas, faith, must determine us? We could not ask that neither should mind or the conception, the idea, be allowed to determine us, to become fixed and inviolable or sacred. Like, okay, so I'm just going to summarize this. Effectively, he's like, look, the state and the church, they do this thing where they tell you that to be truly noble, you must quit yourself of your body and you must die for the ideal. You must be committed entirely to the ideal, which we still have going on right now, right? Like, if I say, like, oh, I'm a philosopher and, like, I have all these years of education and I've done all these things, but I like to go to the club and put my ass on shit and I love to fuck. People are like, there's a tension between that. And I'm like, but why? Why is there a tension between that? Why can I not enjoy myself bodily as well as enjoying myself intellectually? Why are these at odds? And Stirner notices that government and religion say that the way to be truly noble, the way to do something meaningful or good, is to make yourself entirely of the intellect and to quit yourself of your body and its desires. And that actually what that does, it has the effect of making you a tool for ideologues. So that your life itself and your body is cheap and you will throw it away for an idea. And he's not wrong. How do you tell me how you feel about counterfactuals, Kane?
Well,
because I have some fucking struggles with counterfactuals.
Okay, well, you know that I'm a really hardcore empiricist, and so I just don't buy into counterfactuals at all. But that's a bit different to saying that it's mad. I've never thought of Kripke as being mad. I just think, okay,
God,
this is just bullshit in the same way that like moral realism and modal realism and
like he's
all
on
this
the
other
wrong
stuff is bullshit.
track.
And God and all that stuff.
In my crotch region. I don't know. I think God is mad as well.
I don't think that there's any fact of the matter about whether the universe is deterministic or indeterministic. I don't think there are any modal facts. I think modality is a property of models, not the world.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I quite like that. Sorry, I'm filing that away. I have a friend who's in his graduate program at Tufts University, and he's having a real problem with counterfactuals as well. And he wouldn't explain it to me, but then I remember he had read Naming and Necessity, and I was like, yeah, that will like fuck you up, because you're like, this seems arbitrary. Why are some things necessary and other things not? That's my problem, is this like necessary contingent dichotomy. I cannot make sense of it. I cannot understand why some things are necessary and some things are contingent. It seems entirely arbitrary, and I'm being told that no, it's an analytic thing in the world.
Well, maybe that's something.
It seems entirely arbitrary.
Okay, maybe that's something that's interesting to talk about, because people would say that.
That's why I brought it up, bitch.
Yeah. So what's the sort of standard view here? It would be that something like 1 + 1 = 2 is a necessary fact, whereas the fact that I am a philosopher, so that's a contingent fact because it could have been otherwise, whereas it could not have been otherwise.
No, it couldn't have been otherwise.
So-
Not if I had all the properties that I have. Could have been otherwise. Based on what? You have to change something to get a fucking change.
Yeah. So
Could have been otherwise if my mom had fucked the day after she actually did fuck and a different person had been yielded. Yeah, obviously. But that requires you changing something. These counterfactuals without change do not make sense to me.
what do you mean by a counterfactual without change?
Okay. So a counterfactual is as I conceive of it, is based on a conditional. Like, if antecedent, then consequent.
Yeah.
Whereas when we say could have been otherwise, we're just looking at the consequent. We're just saying like, oh, well, this is just a consequence. But we never identify the thing, like, but before every statement of it could have been otherwise, you're required a conditional statement of like, if things had been different in this way, then that would have yielded this result.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's
And
never
then-
made explicit.
Well,
And like how we could know that is completely opaque to me. I
So-
don't get it.
I think that the idea would be when they say if things could have been different in this way, then this would have happened as a consequence. The idea then is, well, okay, different in what way, and is that compatible with physical or logical or biological or whatever laws? So you can imagine a situation where, for example, let's take a pendulum, and we know that the swing, the sort of mass of the pendulum, we can okay, the length of the pendulum is correlated to the period of the pendulum, right? And you can say, well, if the pendulum was this much longer, then it would have a period that's this much longer versus where it is. And so that's compatible
but it would be
with...
a fundamentally different pendulum than the one that existed.
Okay, then. So the concern that you have is that it doesn't make sense to say if this pendulum had been longer, because then you'd be talking about a different pendulum.
Like, what pendulum are you talking about? Yes. You'd be talking about a fundamentally different pendulum that exists in a fundamentally different world. Because these things don't happen apropos of nothing. They are not random. They're born of other facts about the universe. Like that pendulum A is the length that it is as not a product of randomness, but rather a product of the laws of the universe. I am really deterministic, at least in this regard. And if you go and change that one thing about the pendulum, you're changing a ton of other fucking things about the nature of reality in order to get to pendulum B.
Yeah, okay.
Like, they're fundamentally different pendulums, and they exist in fundamentally different universes, so it doesn't make sense to me to talk about, like, well, it could have been different. Could have been different based on what?
So-
and how could you possibly anticipate that?
Let's say that I have a pendulum in front of me and I make the length 20% longer. The thought would be, well, I could have just made it 30% longer, right?
Why?
I actually made it 20% longer, but I could have made it 30% longer.
No.
That's how people tend to think about it.
couldn't have. No, you couldn't have. That would require an entirely different structure of the universe.
You see, the problem with this is that, like, I actually agree with you. I'm just trying to reconstruct the... Well, I don't know if I do agree with you, because you said you were deterministic, whereas I'm
No, I
neither
said, like,
deterministic nor indeterministic.
Yeah,
so.
I said I'm deterministic, like, in this specific regard.
So the
Like,
way that I look at it is
one
just
second.
like,
I think my neighbor's got one of my Amazon packages. 1 second. Ah, counterfactuals.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I
don't
was saying
understand
is
that they're
that
basing the fact that it could have been different, that some things
I
could
think
have been
the
different, but
idea
others
I think the
Seems
idea
arbitrary.
is that it's a matter of compatibility with the physical laws. So, I mean, that's the way that I would think about it anyway, is that you can model a pendulum from the point of view of current physics, or let's say from the point of view of Newtonian mechanics. Newtonian mechanics will specify
I don't want a
a-
Newtonian mechanics.
Sorry?
Anyway, go ahead. I don't want a Newtonian mechanics.
Yeah, but Newtonian mechanics is just easier. I mean, you don't have to talk about that. You can just talk about physics, like current physics, whatever it is.
Make note that I objected to that, but okay.
Well, it's kind
I
of
come up
irrelevant
with
to the point I was making. It's just, it's always
Yeah.
easier to frame it in terms of Newtonian mechanics because, like, that's a theory that is a lot simpler than general relativity.
I know. I'm not being argumentative for no reason, but go ahead.
So, okay then. Well, actually, I probably don't need to frame my point in terms of Newtonian mechanics. I can just frame it in terms of current physics. So, current physics, whatever it may be, general relativity, will specify a certain possibility space for particular objects. So, if you have a pendulum, if you have a mass on a string,
Yeah.
and you start, it starts to bob like that, then it will tell you something about the correlation between the length of the pendulum and the period of the pendulum. And it will say if you get a longer length, then the period is longer by such and such a point. It will specify the whole possibility space. And the actual pendulum operates at a certain point in that possibility space. And so when we say that it could have been otherwise, the pendulum could have done this, we're just saying, all we're saying is it's part of the possibility space that is
To the laws of
specified.
physics as we understand.
Yeah. And I mean, the problem with this is that, like, I'm a total anti-realist about science. I think the point of science is to provide theories and models that capture the observable phenomena. So obviously, I don't believe there are really possibilities out there. I also don't believe there are, like, necessities out there. I don't believe that laws necessitate things. So
that is my exact problem. Is I don't. What does it mean to say that something is possible? And I can understand that, like, under this model, other things would have happened if things were different. But now you're, like, stacking counterfactuals, and I have a problem with that.
yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
I say stacking counterfactuals, and people get upset with me.
Well,
But what I'm saying is that if you change one thing, you necessarily have to change other things as well.
you see, I don't know if our objections
Like,
are
right
the
down
same
to the laws.
because
No, yours is probably more sophisticated than mine because I
Well,
didn't do philosophy of science.
it's not about that. It's more that. So your objection is about the counterfactual, whereas for me it's like, okay, what would make the counterfactual true? And it seems like in order to make a counterfactual true, you have to talk about a possible scenario. So there's something that could have happened, something that could have been the case. And what the hell is that? Right, what is that? I mean, I know what the actual world is. What the hell is a possible scenario?
Yeah,
Right.
no, and you can tell me it's something that doesn't defy the laws of physics, but the world as it is the only world that doesn't defy the laws of physics as we understand them.
Oh, okay,
Any other
yeah, no,
world
that's a good point.
requires some change.
So if you were
Right?
to change something in this world, it would require a violation of the laws of physics. Is that the thought?
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes! Because the world we have is a product of the laws of physics as we understand them.
Couldn't you?
So you can't just go changing things. You have to change at least two things. You have to change the thing that you're trying to change, and you have to change the laws of physics such that that change could come about.
Yeah. Couldn't you just change the initial conditions? So the idea would be go all the way back
But
to
those initial conditions, yeah, sure. If we went back to, like, Big Bang, sure.
yeah.
But I don't think we know enough about that to be fucking speculating and drawing conclusions based on it. Like, that seems fucking crazy to me. And moreover, yeah, we don't know enough about those initial conditions. That is opaque to us. We can speculate, but then we sound like Nozick and we sound fucking crazy. It's not. It's not just a little change. It requires you change either those initial conditions or you change the laws of physics as we understand them.
Okay, so I think we actually have two different problems here. There's a problem of, let's say, the ontology of possibility, of what the hell could possible states of affairs be. And then there's this further problem, is that even once we've got the ontology of possibility, how the hell can we come to have, like, justified beliefs about what those possible states of affairs are like?
There's no way of getting to that without going so far back or changing the laws of physics.
No, I agree with both of those points. Yeah.
And yet people make, like, sharp, seemingly analytic declarations about it, and maybe I'm missing something. I'm willing to accept that maybe
just to be clear, I mean,
I don't get it.
I don't think that there are, like, laws of physics built into the world itself. I mean, again, I would treat them as just features of models rather than features of the world. So for me, this whole debate, in a sense, sort of doesn't even get started.
But the goal is to model things as accurately as possible.
Well, I would say that
or as functionally as possible.
I would say that the goal is simply to capture the observable phenomena and to allow us to predict and control and systematize the observable phenomena.
Which would require some level of accuracy and an ideal level.
But you don't necessarily have to be. So the problem is like, well, what exactly is a law supposed to be? I mean, if all you mean when you talk about a law of physics is like a certain regularity in the world, then like, okay, that's fine, right? But I don't think that's what people people tend to mean more than that. When people talk about there being a law in the world, they tend to mean something that necessitates certain things. So it's like, you know, once you've got, say, a mass here, it necessitates that that another mass will bring them together. So, you know, when we talk about like a gravitational law, that's not just a regularity in the world. That's like there's something almost behind the phenomena that is bringing these things together, that is necessitating it, that is making it the case that it must be the case that these things come together. I mean, it's kind of a Humean point, you know, like Hume was like, well, you don't ever actually observe causality, right? I'm just adopting that point with respect to laws, right? So I have a lot of problems with counterfactuals,
Yeah, no, my problem is when people make claims about counterfactuals. Like, I want to shake them and be like, how could you know that? Like, you either have to change the initial conditions of the universe, and how could you know what would fall out of that?
Well, maybe
to get to the point where you're declaring like necessity and contingency, or
so can I
you
just
have to ignore all that. Go ahead.
So can I ask you then, right? I mean, so let's take two examples, right? It could not have been the case that it could not be the case that this rocket exceeds the speed of light, right? How do we know that? I guess the response would be, well, we know it because we have this very well confirmed theory of physics which tells us that nothing can exceed the speed of light, versus something like, okay, how do you know that you could have picked out a blue shirt this morning? Well, because you know...
I don't think I could have picked out a blue shirt this morning.
Okay, but just...
That's the thing.
Let me finish.
I think they are on the same level.
Let me finish.
Okay.
The idea would be, well, look, you can go to your closet right now and open it and pick out a blue shirt. So you know there's nothing like blocking you from doing that. You know that... You can also say about the reason why...
But this morning there was.
You can also say about the reason why you picked out the shirt you did. You can say, well, I picked out the shirt I did, you know, because such and such, and you might have had different reasons or something along that. You know, you have in the past, let me put it this way, you have in the past had different reasons for picking out the shirts that you've picked out. And so I guess the thought would be that would be what shows that you could have done otherwise.
I think could have done otherwise is delusory.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe I could not have done otherwise without changing the initial conditions of the universe, and to what degree and in what way, I do not know. Most likely in such a way as to annihilate my existence, because that seems like the most likely outcome of changing any initial condition of the universe. I don't know, though. I don't fucking know. And that's what gets me, is how anybody can look at that and come back with anything other than I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, why? It seems that the Cole that was born on September 9th, as we discussed earlier, 1986, was born as a product of the people who came before her, and back and back and back and back and back. So we can get back to initial conditions and change those, then obviously what falls out of that is different. But if you don't change those, then what falls out of that is subject to the laws of physics in the same way as anything else. And that the Cole that was born had the DNA she had and was then subject to the course of events that she was subject to, such that this morning, always that same choice to pick out this basic bitch top was going to fall out of that. I don't know I feel like I'm missing something. But I also feel like half of it's my problem that I'm missing something with this idea of necessity and contingency. But then I feel like half of it is their problem because they haven't explained why they can make claims about things having been different without accounting for all the changes that would require.
Okay.
Let me tell you about when we got arrested. Or almost got arrested. So every time I ride my bike down the strip, I flip cops off and I sing them songs about fuck you. And they're lovely songs. Fuck you. This is a civil liberty of mine. Fuck you. You took a job that requires you to steal money from women for selling sex. You didn't even have to sell your butthole, and yet you got money for fucking. Like, I like very loudly. I sing nonsense songs about what fucking pricks they are. I also quite enjoy, because they're not wearing masks. The cops here are not wearing masks at all, or gloves or anything. They're not acknowledging COVID-19 because Donald Trump is not acknowledging COVID-19, and somehow I occupy a universe in which Donald Trump is president. So this is the state of affairs. I don't really give a shit, but I do really love heckling cops and saying, you should be wearing a mask. I don't want to get swine flu. And like, there's this moment of confusion where they're like, does a bitch think that what is happening is swine flu? Or is she calling me a pig? And they genuinely cannot tell. And I love it. I love it so much. So I yell swine flu, and I tell them to stay 6 feet away because I don't want the swine flu. And I always add the article "the" in front of it. I'm like, I don't want the swine flu. Stay the fuck away from me. I don't want it. You're not wearing a mask. And like, they seem genuinely perplexed. So I've been doing this for like, it's really funny, right?
You got to stop a second before you continue the story, because I'm honestly feeling like kind of nauseous, and you're making me laugh, and it's making it worse. We need to just calm down a minute.
Swine flu.
Yeah.
Pain.
Just stop.
Pain. I don't want the swine flu.
You got to stop a second.
They have to stay away from me. So when they try to like get mad at me for flipping them off, and they come up to me, I'm like, nah, bro, you're gonna give me the swine flu. You definitely have it. You don't have a mask on. And they're very confused. And I enjoy it more than I enjoy anything else. So I get on my little bicycle, and I'm flipping cops off, and I'm singing them songs about how they're prigs and they steal money from prostitutes. So like, fuck them. And I'm just delighting in this. It's my fucking First Amendment right, and I am enjoying my civil liberties as an American because I am fairly patriotic. So I'm riding my bicycle, getting my like state allotted amount of coronavirus exercise so that I can like stay fit. And I'm riding down to the strip, and the cops here aren't doing shit because nobody is breaking any laws, because actually everything is fine. And people generally don't want to hurt each other or break laws. And we don't fucking need those cocksuckers. But anyway, they're like all congregated. They're like 100 police cars on the strip and around Las Vegas Boulevard, like around the strip. So I'm flipping them off on my bike, which is completely within the bounds of legality. I've made sure it has a front light, a back light, a fucking bell, like side reflectors, everything. I've looked up the penal codes for bikes so that I can flip off cops with impunity. So I'm just cycling along, and I'm flipping off cops, and I'm yelling that I don't want to get swine flu from them, and they should wear masks so they don't contaminate people with their fucking pig bullshit. And I'm delighted, and I find it hilarious, and I'm enjoying the wordplay, and this fucking cop starts following me. For 3 blocks, he followed my boyfriend and I until we get to this point where we have to ride an elevator to cross the strip, and these are public elevators. And he pulls around the corner really fast and like jumps out of his fucking car, like throws it in the park and jumps out, and he goes, "Did you have something to fucking say to me?" And I was like, given your like state, emotional state right now, I feel like you got the point. Is there something specifically you'd like me to elaborate on? Because I think you understood what this means. And like, I did it at him. And he was like, "Yeah, I want to know what the fuck you're doing that for." And I'm like, well, first of all, as an American citizen, I have the right to exercise free speech. I find your authority illegitimate. I think your use of force to enforce that authority is morally despicable. And I don't think we need you, and I don't want you, and I think you're the problem, and we're the solution. And, you know, we discussed this for maybe 2 minutes with him like screaming at me incoherently. I mean, like very calmly, I paused my music because I was listening to music on the speaker on my smartphone so that I could explain to him why he was an utter piece of shit, and why he was a problem, not helpful. And I endeavored to do so because I teach. That's what I do. So I was like, look, you threaten people with violence. You escalate non-violent situations, such as this one, into violent situations. I don't think we need you. I think for the most part, people are decent and just want to be left the fuck alone. And without you, people, might do a shitload of drugs and might sell sex and might do all these things. But the actual big scary stuff, I don't think is a problem. In fact, I think you worsen that because y'all are typically corrupt. And just explain this perfectly calmly. At some point, he was also real short, like shorter than I am, and you know I'm tall. So, like, that's not saying much. Like, he was average male height, but I'm quite tall. So, he was, like, trying to walk up on me and, like, physically intimidate me, and it wasn't working. And then he was trying to use, like, his cop status, like, he had his hand on his fucking gun the whole time, and I'm like, oh, you're not gonna fucking shoot me. I'm using my mouth sounds. Like, if you shoot me over my mouth sounds, then, like, your life is over. You better fucking aim for the heart because otherwise your life is fucking over.
Is his life over?
Actually, Nevada is interesting. Nevada had the worst rate of like police aggression of any state. So the state of Nevada actually takes fairly seriously police overstep or overreach. Anyway, I'll follow up on that when I'm done with the story. So I'm just talking to him, and he's like getting increasingly angry that I'm like not scared of him or being like, "Oh my God, please leave me alone. I care about you and you're threatening to me. I'm so scared of you. Do you want to fuck me? Like, will that make you go away?" Like, he's really upset that I'm not responding. And when he's come up to me, he referenced other times I'd flipped him off and accused him of having swine flu. So this is retribution for my political acts of free speech. And there's no denial of this. And it's all recorded on the security cameras in this little alcove he's cornered me in. Which is illegal. He has violated a fucking Supreme Court designation that we're allowed to flip cops off.
Yeah.
If he harasses me for flipping him off, he is in violation of law. He is now breaking the fucking law. So and I tell him this, and he, like, immediately, as soon as he sees that he can't fucking scare me, pivots to my boyfriend who is standing, like, behind him. And he's like, "Get in front of my fucking car." And I'm like, "What? No, I flipped you off, you fucker. You came up to talk to me. Don't go after him. He didn't do anything fucking wrong. He didn't do shit. He was standing there silently. He didn't say shit." And he fucking grabs AJ and, like, slams him up against the front of his fucking car. And then, like, demands his ID, demands AJ's IG, and AJ is completely complacent in this and, like, gives him his ID and is very calm. And the motherfucker gets inside his car and he's like, "Drop your fucking backpack right now, there might be guns in there," and is, like, yelling at him over a loudspeaker from inside his car. And I'm like, chill your little bullshit fucking tyrannical ass out. And I like grab the backpack and I'm like, this shit is mine. We're not putting it on the ground. There were roaches all over Las Vegas. And I grab it and I'm like, do you feel like a big enough man now for harassing my boyfriend because I wasn't scared of you? Good fucking job. This motherfucker grabbed his fucking gun. At which point I was like, holy shit. I flipped him off. He tried to intimidate me. It didn't work. And then he went after a loved one of mine. That is collective punishment. That's in violation of the fucking Geneva Conventions. Like, imagine if you flip somebody off and, like, they beat the shit out of your mom for it. Like, that is the most fucked up. And I just, like, I don't know, as soon as he had my boyfriend, I was just like, whatever you fucking say. I wasn't arguing with him anymore. I wasn't being playful or sassy or talking about my civil liberties anymore. Because as soon as you would do something as clearly in violation of the law, and I, as an error theorist, will venture to say, as clearly fucking fucked up and immoral as attacking somebody's loved one to punish them, attacking an innocent person to punish the person you actually have a problem with, because he knew he couldn't do shit to me. He went after somebody I fucking cared about. I don't know what you might do. I have no, you are clearly not within the bounds of any social or legal sense of ethics or morality. You have seriously quit yourself of any of this shit. And you are taking out your grudge against me on an innocent person. You are fucking organized crime. And I did continue to shout this at him. And he called for backup. And eventually there were like 5 fucking cops who didn't see this guy fucking come at me because I flipped him off. And didn't understand that actually we had done nothing wrong. Like, they're cops and they're like gonna be bros. So these poor dumb motherfuckers were just like trying to back up their fucking fraternalistic bro who was like, they broke the law. We broke no law. AJ, my boyfriend, did nothing fucking wrong. He was for 20 minutes. He fucking tormented him, threw him around, grabbed his fucking gun at him, and shouted at him over a loudspeaker, like right in his face. And not only did he shout at it over a loudspeaker, he shouted impossible commands. Like, he told him to come to the front of the car, and AJ's body was like pressed against the front of the fucking car, and he was like, come to the fucking front of the car or I'll arrest you. He couldn't comply. There was no, AJ was completely fucking compliant, and he was doing this to make me fucking afraid, and it worked. It fucking worked. And like the whole time I'm like, why are you harassing him? It's me you have a problem with. Come at me, you fucking coward. And he didn't. He wouldn't. He tortured me through somebody I cared about who did nothing wrong. And yeah, I flipped off cops, so maybe they're gonna fucking hassle me. But the idea that they would come after my fucking loved ones is fucking... Holy shit! I've never in my life had anything like that happen before. That is the most corrupt abuse of power I can fucking conceive of. And this is why I had a sick stomach this morning, and this is why I was all riled up, because I'm not going to stop flipping off cops.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. No, fuck them. Fuck them. And if he thinks that stupid fucking display of illegitimate authority is gonna fucking stop me, he's wrong. What it'll do is make me keep my fucking distance from anybody I care about, so he can only fucking come after me. Fuck him, but he's too fucking afraid to. God damn it! I'm so fucking mad about this, and I have no recourse, because I didn't fucking record it, because my phone battery died, because I was listening to music on the way down there. Although, I have a few friends who are lawyers who are like, actually, because they ran your boyfriend's ID, we can like get the security camera footage and everything else, and we can sue the shit out of these cops. So we are pursuing that.
Nice.
But yeah, they harmed an innocent man in order to punish me for my expression of free speech. It would have been fucked up if they had fucking harassed me for my expression of free speech.
Yeah,
But then they took it a step fucking further and attacked an innocent man. The idea that these people are doing good in the world is despicable. Philosophy undergrads tend to make the best lawyer graduate students, so there are a lot of philosophy people I know who are now lawyers.
Yeah.
Which is extremely beneficial to me, and I can argue like a motherfucker. So extremely beneficial to me. In fact, while they were harassing us, one of them was like, "Are you a lawyer?" And I should have just said yes. Because I was arguing with them. I was like making sense. And they're like, "Oh my God, this person is making coherent points. They must be a lawyer." Which is, whatever. Probably indicative of their experience in the world, which is cops are incoherent fucking pricks who are violent and hurt people,
You
and
should have said
lawyers make
yes.
good arguments.
It wouldn't have been illegal for you to say yes, right? You could have just said yes, could you? How does it work
I don't
there?
know.
Okay.
I don't know the law there, but so
I feel like there's been a higher chance of them just leaving you alone if you'd said yes.
they went after AJ
Yeah.
is because my bike is completely within the bounds of the law, and the battery on his back tail light had died.
Right.
So they were harassing him, presumably, and there were like hundreds of bicyclists who have like no lights on their bikes on the strip. It was very clearly harassment because of my exercise of my First Amendment rights. Like, very fucking clearly. And I don't know, like, I've always been prepared for them to come after me. When he jumped out of his fucking car and ran his little short ass up to me and tried to fucking scare me, I was completely prepared for that. I knew that was going to happen. I'm flipping off cops. Obviously something like that's going to happen. And if he wanted to take me to fucking jail, fine. I'll sue the shit out of them. Because I knew I was well within my rights, and I knew that everything I was doing was legal. And if somebody can't be a fucking grown-up and handle being flipped off, and can't handle fucking political free speech, fuck them. I hope they fucking lose their job. I'm not settling out of court. I'm pushing for your fucking loss of a job. You should not have a fucking gun. You should not be enforcing the fucking law in this country. Fuck you forever. You can't bribe me with fucking money. You are out. And I hope you end up on a fucking street corner, you piece of violent shit. But no, they didn't come after me. They came after somebody who did nothing wrong because the battery on his taillight had gone out, and that gave them an in to be vindictive and fucking shitty and try to hurt me because I did something they didn't like. Something perfectly legal that they didn't like. I objected to their fucking presence. I am like still fuming about this. And yeah, of course I had an upset stomach this morning. Like, the second they fucking grabbed him, argument or the concept of recording them or any of that went out the fucking window. Because if you're going to be that outside conventional morality and conventional law, I don't know what you might do. He could have just shot him in the head. I don't know. Right? Like, all logic is gone from this. I have nothing to operate on. I have nothing to judge on. And I don't know. So yeah, if you point a gun at somebody I love, I'm going to do whatever you say. And it fucking sucked because he could have pointed a gun at me and I would have held my ground. But he knew. He knew that the way to get me to be complacent was to threaten to harm an innocent person who I cared about. So I have a really good friend who's a lawyer who I made a post on Facebook about what happened to my boyfriend and I. And he saw it. And he's an attorney. I knew him during undergrad as a philosopher. His undergrad major was philosophy. And he messaged me and he was like, I don't know if I morally agree with anything you were doing, but what happened to your boyfriend is fucked up. And I want to help you. And right now the courts are essentially closed because of coronavirus. Can I help you?
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, like, here's all the information. Here's the access to my Google timeline, phone tracking info, so we can, like, figure out who this fucker was. And, like, here's all the information. And I asked him, I said, may I ask you a question? Just like one friend to another. You're not under any legal obligation or anything. And he was like, yeah, go for it. And I'm like, if I keep flipping off cops, because I'm going to. In fact, that very night, I continued to yell, fuck the police at them. Because fuck them for thinking that's gonna, like, endear me to them. You fucking harass me and point a gun at my fucking boyfriend because of my behavior? And you think that's gonna make me be like, oh yeah, cops are, like, super necessary in the world and helpful. What the fuck kind of twisted logic is that?
I don't think they're trying to do that. I don't think that's their goal. I think they're just trying to scare you, aren't they?
They're trying to scare me into complacency
fear.
so that there is no fucking political speech about them.
Yeah.
And I'm not letting that happen. So I told my friend who is an attorney, like, look, I'm not going to stop. I might distance myself from anybody who's around me so that they have to fucking come after me and they can't come after those fuckers. But because I was literally castrated by this. I was rendered completely innocuous and ineffectual because I was just every action I had was in the interest of preserving of the life and the well-being of the person I cared about, who they were torturing and terrorizing. Anyway, so I'm like, look, but I will continue to do this. I have no intention of fucking stopping. Fuck them if they think that's gonna fucking stop me. All they taught me is to keep my distance from those I love, or maybe don't love anyone. Maybe they taught me that. I don't fucking know. But all the same, like, I'll fucking take it. Point your fucking guns at me, you fucking cowardly pricks. And they wouldn't. And I know they won't in the future. And I was like, if one of them were to shoot me or seriously harm me, what's the likelihood that they would get away with it without any kind of recourse? And my friend said to me, I can read it to you if you want.
Yeah.
I said, may I ask you something? If I were to continue to flip off cops with impunity and something like this were to happen again with the same guy, how much do you think he could get away with? Like, could he have seriously hurt me or made up charges or arrested either of us? Or is there enough oversight that something like that would be immediately shut down? I'm just asking one clever human to another. You're under no legal obligation. And he said to me, I mean this seriously. Is that sarcasm?
Mm.
And then he went on to say, yeah, that guy could have killed you. And probably, I mean, if you weren't who you were, if you didn't have a ton of lawyer friends, and if you weren't as educated as you were, and if you didn't hold the social status that you hold, there would be no recourse. Nothing would happen. If you were not so clearly, based on your existence and your history, exercising free speech and no actual threat to these people, there would be no recourse. That guy would get away with it.
Yeah.
Is it really that naive of me to think that, like,
I am...
people should be held accountable?
Okay, I am stunned that you are stunned. Okay, I'm stunned that you're shocked by this, because I just thought this was... I mean, to me, everything you're saying is like, oh yeah, that's what the American police do. That's exactly why I would be fucking terrified if I came to America and if I was with you and a fucking police officer stopped us. Yeah, if I was in that situation, I would be terrified, because it's like, shit, I mean, they could just kill me right now, and like they actually,
okay.
like, there's a significant, I mean, there's a small, let's say small but significant probability that I could just get shot here and nothing is going to happen. Like, that's the impression that I have of America, and I don't know if that's propaganda, but that's the impression I have, and everything you're telling me is...
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Because look, you are white and I look white, and you've heard that poem, right?
First they came for the so-and-so. Is that
yep.
one? Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for me not needing to look it up. So yeah, I look white, but that's not going to stop me from speaking up, because I know how this goes. This shouldn't be... You should not be fucking concerned, and I should be able to fucking do this. I should be able to do this. I should be able to stand in front of the people who they would fucking shoot. It's... I lack the words to verbalize this frustration. They need to be done away with. They need to be gotten rid of. And the fact that you from another country know enough about like your entire view of how things happen here, be it based on propaganda or not, that propaganda could not be successful if it were that far off reality. You're an intelligent person. You interrogate claims.
I mean, look, let's just be clear about this. Like, this is really well known here. In fact, there's a joke in Doctor Who where, like, I can't remember exactly what this is, but they land somewhere in America and, like, the police come out and pull guns on them. And the Doctor is sort of like, oh, you're not going to shoot us. And then one of the characters is like, yo, this is America. And he's like, whoa, you know. And so that's how well known this is, you know. It's like, yeah, if you're in America, the fucking police are going to shoot you. I
can be glad that the rest of the world knows that these are fucking tyrannical, dickhead pricks. But I don't know how much of a difference that makes if they shoot my boyfriend. Like, they literally, like just last week arrested some fucking, like, white former pig bigots in Georgia for shooting this black guy.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Who may or may not have been being like low-key sketchy, but definitely not like capital offense low-key sketchy.
Yeah. I heard, what was his name? Well, it was 2 A's or something, I think. Yeah. And well, at least they arrested them. Because initially
my friend, I have a friend who's a stand-up comedian who occasionally says something so concisely that it goes viral. Once George Takei accidentally stole something this friend said, and then my friend called him out on it. He was like, "I'm really sorry. That was a great thing you fucking said. It was something about homophobia." Anyway, so the same friend said, "Always remember, they didn't make arrests because they saw the tapes. Semicolon.
Yeah.
They made arrests because we saw the tapes." And it went fucking viral. And the visceral truth of that, and the elegance of that statement, and the simplicity of it is undeniable and brutal in its accuracy. Like, it hurts me to know how fucking accurate that is. That they saw those tapes and they did fucking nothing. For a month, they did fucking nothing. And it wasn't until we did that they were forced to take action.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
that's my government. That's my fucking government.
I mean, it's a problem even over here. I imagine it's a problem everywhere, is that, you know, the pigs will protect the pigs, and that's why the idea of there being, you know, good cops and bad cops is just completely nonsensical.
It's fucking organized crime. It's
they will all protect each other.
Crime.
And although
that's what happened, is this little fucking like piglet came up and tried to fucking intimidate me because his fucking tiny prick couldn't take that I fucking was disgusted with him and rejected him on every fucking level and didn't feel like he was protecting me. And when it didn't work for me, he went after my fucking boyfriend and he called in his fucking pig backup, and without asking questions, listening not a word to the single coherent person who was there, who was objective about it, who said an innocent person is being fucking harassed and tortured and terrorized because this guy has a little prick and is short. I have no problem with short people. I fuck tons of short people. I love short guys. It's like,
yeah, I know, but there are short guys. There are short guys with the Napoleon complex.
It's kind of the thing I like.
Right?
But yeah, no, he had a fucking serious fucking problem with it.
Yeah.
Fucking tried to walk up on a bitch, and when that didn't work, he called for his pig backup, and they didn't ask any questions. They were fucking as goddamn gullible as could be. Their default was to accept this piece of shit fucking position and just to go with it. And I'm paying for that? What? What? Fuck you. Forever. Although there was one.
Yeah.
He talked to me and he was like, why are you so pissed off? And I'm like, right now or in general? And he couldn't answer that question because they make sure that their cops are not too intelligent. They actually will not take intelligent cops. It's a thing. There have been several. I don't want to call them op-ed, but several pieces of investigative journalism on how they accept cops into the force and how they don't. And if they're too intelligent, they won't accept them. Time and time again. So these fucking, by design, this poor, good-hearted, but dumbass fucking pig is like, I don't know what in general and specifically means. So I go, look, I'll explain both to you. In general, I think your authority is illegitimate. And I think I have these rights. And I'm going to exercise these rights to express my political dissent against your presence here. Specifically, I am pissed off because you were torturing my boyfriend for something I did that was not illegal.
Yeah.
Because that little fucker has a problem with me. And if he had come up to me, if he had dropped his illegitimate state authority and come up to me to have a fucking chat with me, one human being to another, I would have happily had a chat with him, which I attempted to do. I attempted to explain my reasoning and explain why. Fuck him forever. And because he was too stupid and incapable of offering any kind of objection or rejoinder, he utilized that authority illegitimately to hurt somebody I cared about. And I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that if you did something you believed in, and somebody grabbed one of your kids or your fucking wife, you wouldn't kill that motherfucker. And he looks at me. This cop looked at me and he goes, yeah, I'd kill that motherfucker. And I'm like, so I'm being pretty fucking polite right now, aren't I? And he was like, yeah, I guess so. And as I walked away in front of the rest of the fucking little pig crew, I said, I want you to look at me and tell me you wouldn't kill somebody for what they fucking just did to the person I love. If it were you. And he said, I can't say that. So good on that pig. Good on that pig. I hope he fucking quits the force.
Yeah.
I fucking hope he does some positive thing with his life. Become an EMT. Actually fucking help people. Do something good with your fucking shit. Dumb as you are, by design, you were still decent enough on a fundamental level beyond fucking intellect to understand that what was done to us was wrong. Fuck that guy. God damn it. I'm sorry, I'm ranting and I have to pee really badly.
So do I, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you could have interrupted me at any point. I'm sorry. Like, this just... I'm relieved that you guys know. That everybody else knows.